I am back, and tonight or today we are going to start talking about the things that sustain us. First of all, money, water that sustains us, the food that sustains us, and the energy that sustains us. And we are going to start with a chapter called the Fiscus. Currently, only about 45% of the tax collected in the Cape is ever returned to the Cape government, as the national government retains the remaining 55%. Note the Division of Revenue Act 1 of the 9th of February 2018, where the national government claims almost two-thirds, that is 64.75% of the total revenue budget. Schedule 1. Equitable division of revenue raised nationally among the three spheres of government. And there you will see a chart, and I'm not going to go through all the numbers in that chart, but I'm going to keep these images on the screen while I carry on with the chapters, and you will be able to follow on from these numbers. In the 2016-2017 tax year, the South African Revenue Services, that is SARS, collected approximately 1.144 billion rand in taxes, of which at least 16% were collected in the Western and Northern Cape, if previous years of average are taken. Cape residents pay more than 183 billion per year to SARS, yet receive only 83 billion. The remaining 100 billion is retained by the central government, who through corruption and lack of effective management demonstrated significant abuse of these funds that were meant for the benefit of the people of South Africa. If the Cape acquires control of its tax revenue, the funds available to the Cape Landers government will be more than double its current allocation. Thus, the government of an independent Cape will not only be able to collect sufficient taxes to cover its expenditure, but will be able to function optimally after independence. Let's talk about water. As in the case with electricity, the South African national government has ignored all warning signs relating to the country's water supply. In 2014, 98% of South Africa's total water supply was being used, with as much as 37% being lost through wastage. Estimates of up to 60 billion rand would be required to avoid a nationwide water crisis, relating to an approximate equivalent of 20 times the Department of Water and Sanitation, that is the DWS, annual budget. The water supply for Cape Town metropolitan area already functions independently of the rest of South Africa. Most water in South Africa is supplied by local authorities and water boards. As none of the water boards' areas stretches across Cape borders, no significant water pipelines exist between the Cape and the rest of South Africa. The Western Cape, and particularly the city of Cape Town, regularly suffer severe drought conditions. Although the Western Cape government is doing everything in its power to address the water crisis, the problem is that water licenses and allocations are directly controlled by the national DWS, being riddled with incompetence and corruption. The current problems could easily be solved by private water suppliers. Various local, that is Cape, and international companies have previously indicated their desire to erect, manage and fund desalination plants and solar power stations in the Cape. The municipalities only pay for the water produced and not the capital to erect the plants, nor the operation and maintenance of the plants. The water tariffs offered by these companies approximate the current municipal tariffs. Additionally, the wastewater of larger cities, that is Cape Town, would be purified for agricultural supply rather than being pumped and lost into the sea. This system of desalination for human consumption and wastewater purification for agricultural reuse has been a key to Israeli survival for decades. Let's talk about food production. Food supply is a crucial commodity, and its availability and affordability are important to the survival of any community, allowing the individual and the nation to develop to their full potential. The main food sources must nutritionally possess all necessary minerals, vitamins, proteins, and starches. Meat and fish for protein, vegetables and fruits for minerals and vitamins, vegetables and cereals for starches. Let's talk about meat and fish. In terms of the meat production, the Cape area is currently the prime producer of mutton and lamb meat. Chicken farming in the Western Cape supplies the entire Cape with chicken meat and can easily provide the demand for chicken for both provinces. Sufficient pork producers are functioning within the area to adequately supply the Cape's demand. The local beef production, however, does not sufficiently provide for the Cape region, since the largest feedlots are currently located in the northern parts of South Africa. The Cape does not have to compete with these industries, but merely requires focused input to increase productivity and output. The Cape has 1,350 kilometers of coastline with a large fishing industry. Cape Town and the surrounding coastal fishing industry currently exports substantial quantities of fish to other countries and can comfortably provide more than enough fish for local use whilst continuing to export excess product. The establishment of both seawater and freshwater fish farms provides a huge business opportunity for a more autonomous Cape, which will expand fish export opportunities and deliver affordable fresh fish proteins locally. However, the South African National Department of Fisheries has been mismanaging the fish resources and licenses for almost 15 years, and in many cases fishing licenses have been taken away from the traditional fishermen, only to be handed to friends and family of the central government's officials and the Chinese. Fruit and vegetable production. The Western Cape is regarded as the vegetable basket of Southern Africa, answering the supply of vegetables to the whole of the Cape without any imports. Fruit is also exported in large quantities. In 2015, more than 50% of South Africa's fruit was exported from the Western Cape. Grain and starch crops. Starch crops, which include corn, wheat, potatoes, beans, and peas, are grown in the Northern Cape, but due to the much larger volume produced in the Free State, it is deemed unnecessary to increase production in the Northern Cape. However, the existing irrigation schemes of the Northern and Western Cape are fully capable of accommodating large corn farm expansion to meet the local Cape's corn demand. The Western Cape is the principal producer of wheat for South Africa. The production of potatoes in the Western Cape satisfies the Cape's demand, but will require expansion as population and consumption increase. The cultivation of beans and peas in the Western Cape has drastically decreased due to higher production in the northern areas of the country. This balance can be restored by planting enough to supply the whole of the Cape. Electricity supply. In the current dispensation, the South African Electricity Supply Commission, that's Eskom, has a total monopoly of the distribution and generation of electricity with no free market competition or accountability. Unfortunately, the years of poor planning, mismanagement, and failure to implement its 1998 power policy, the South African government and Eskom has plunged the entire country into a power crisis, now implementing stage 6 level load shedding. This was at the stage when this article was written. The new coal-fired power station near Ellisras, scheduled to come online in 2010, is currently 12 years behind schedule. The power crisis reached a critical point when cracks were discovered in the Majuba power station's coal silo structure. And since that discovery, load shedding has become a very common phenomenon in South Africa. At the end of 2015, Eskom announced that the power crisis was a thing of the past. However, Eskom then reduced consumption due to a weakened economy, the contribution of independent power suppliers, and a lack of forward production planning, and Eskom ultimately failed to increase generation output. The economic impact of any power crisis can never be underestimated. The current, this is 2022, stage 6 load shedding are set to become the norm, potentially costing the South African economy 4 billion rand per day. Various power-intensive industries such as aluminium smelters have collapsed, whilst most other industries have suffered heavy losses under this mismanagement of power. Eskom's funding shortfall in 2017 approximated 78 billion rand, of which 4.2 billion rand was budgeted just for annual and performance bonuses. In the 2016-2017 financial year, a 900 million rand payment for McKinsey and a 495 million rand payment to Trillion was made, two consulting companies that were appointed without contract. It is this type of mismanagement that caused Eskom's credit rating to be downgraded to junk status by the international ratings companies. Yet, the government will refuse privatization of the country's electricity market or to launch serious solutions to stabilize the sector. At this stage, it is worth noting that before Nelson Mandela's political party took over the government, investment of Eskom 168 bonds was commonly accepted as the benchmark for risk-free return on investments by the investment community. Eskom's staff grew from 33,000 in the 2007-2008 financial year to 48,000 in the 2016-2017 financial year, while at the same time power supply decreased nationally. Sunday Times, July the 3rd, 2022, front page, Eskom, it's even worse than you think, and I will post that graph on the screen right now. Over the same period, this is 2008 to 2016, power tariffs more than doubled in real terms. Eskom is in a downward spiral. Higher tariffs create reduced energy consumption, causing reduced revenue, which further escalates tariffs for poorly delivered energy. Meanwhile, alternative renewable energy tariff reductions from photovoltaic solar power stations to 45 cents per kilowatt hour and the developer financed power station construction could rapidly unburden Eskom, allowing for focus on stabilizing base power delivery. Solar power is also cheaper than Eskom's 2018 tariffs at 68 cents per kilowatt hour. This chasm between Eskom's tariffs and renewable energy tariffs will exponentially increase and accelerate Eskom's demise in the near future. This threat of renewable energy has ensured that Eskom refuses to enter into any new agreements with independent renewable energy power producers. Independent power producers are commonly known as IPPs. Even though the same IPP companies have already won the tenders, Eskom's 2018 decision to sign these IPP agreements was thwarted after a court order was obtained by NUMSA and Transform South Africa, or Transform SA, seeking to protect coal workers in northern South Africa at the direct expense of new minority jobs in Cape Town. The unwarranted interference specifically cost the Northern Cape thousands of jobs and millions of rands in income, foreign investment and community benefit. Most of these issues could be solved by the privatization of Eskom and the establishment of a free market system. However, since 2016, the national government does the exact opposite, electing to rather amend the Electricity Regulation Act of 2006, the so-called Draft Licensing Exemption and Registration Notice, which seeks the removal of private competition. Via this amendment, every installation greater than 1 megawatt capacity, including private use only, which is not connected to the Eskom network, will be subject to the National Integrated Resource Plan, or IRP. The amendment will determine both types of generation and the allowed quotas for each type of power generation. Once the specific generation type quota has been reached, no further installations will be allowed. Amendments of this nature allows the national governments to ensure Eskom's monopoly control is maintained whilst preventing privatization of the South African energy market. The Cape's 2017 network scale generation installations consisted of the Koeberg Nuclear Power Station, delivering approximately 1,860 megawatts, the Northern Cape Solar Concentrators delivering 750 megawatts, and its hydroelectric systems delivering 250 megawatts. Wind and photovoltaic excitement installations delivering 1,430 megawatts, and in the Western Cape delivering 670 megawatts. This proves that the Cape will be significantly improved once it controls its own power grid. A further 2,250 megawatts is available from the open cycle gas turbines at Anchor Light, Gaurikwa and Acacia, plus 580 megawatts from the Palmit and Steenbras pump storage schemes in the Western Cape for use during peak times. In total, the Cape possesses a substantial power generation capacity. Base load 2100 megawatts, nuclear and hydroelectricity. Peak generation of 3,335 megawatts, that is pump storage systems, solar concentrators and gas turbines. Varying volumes of renewable energy plus minus 2,100 megawatts, that is from photovoltaic cells and wind. The Cape's current power consumption is estimated at an average range of 3,000 to 3,500 megawatts, with a peak demand of 5,100 megawatts. Its generation capacity allows the Cape to adequately meet its electricity needs by 2020-2021, considering the time calculation of the power consumption, influx of additional population, and the fluctuating volume of renewable generation. Eskom currently expects the Cape to become a net exporter of electrical power within years, and via its excellent solar radiation resource, the Cape will be the dominant energy-producing region in southern Africa by 2040. Accelerating solar concentrators with heat storage capacity and local energy storage capacity for smaller towns will shorten the Cape's electrical self-sufficiency to only a few years. Again, these projects do not require taxpayer funding, as most major power station operators provide the capital and operational expenditure. There will be no need to disconnect the Cape grid from the rest of South Africa, as it will be beneficial to maintain the connections, especially after secession. Thereby, the Cape will become a net energy producer for South Africa, and other northern countries in Africa will benefit from our stable baseload delivery and result in a viable source of income for the Cape. Whilst the central government places huge pressure on Eskom to build new nuclear power plants of Russian origin, for example, it ignores the speed and economic benefit of the renewable energy sector's significantly lower capital cost when compared to nuclear power. The cost of these new nuclear power plants will serve only to burden South Africa with additional debt that will never be repaid and is just another reason the Cape should secede. Let's talk about fuel. The availability of petrol or gasoline and diesel is of utmost importance in the development of any country. South Africa has only 3 sources of fuel supply: importation of crude oil, Petro SA's manufacturing of gasoline from natural gas, Sasol's manufacturing of petrol from coal. The existing crude oil refineries in Milnerton, Cape Town, can continue processing crude oil to petrol, diesel, and all the various other byproducts that are also important for a standalone area, such as bitumen and various plastics and chemical products. Byproducts such as nitrogen are important for agricultural fertilization. However, in 2017, Chevron sold the Milnerton refinery to Sinopec, a Chinese state company. The current Sinopec deal remains subject to large black entrepreneurial investment, which again excludes virtually the entire population of Cape Town. Petro SA is currently processing natural gas to petrol, diesel, industrial alcohol, and all the byproducts of the above. The expansion of the gas fields at Petro SA's refinery in Mossel Bay has recently cost 9 billion rand for drilling 3 new holes. The development of additional gas fields will soon commence south of Alexander Bay on the west coast, where the estimated yield of gas production will exceed the current delivery at Mossel Bay on the southern coast or the southeast coast. It is therefore clear that the existing Cape-based petroleum infrastructure and natural gas reserves are more than sufficient to meet its regional demand and attain self-sufficiency in terms of fuel and its byproducts. I think we're going to leave this one there now. And in the next one, I'm going to start talking about communication networks. And this is a very, very interesting one. It's something I really didn't know. Stay tuned for that one. I'll catch you in the next one. Be safe out there.